Puma Punku and Tiwanaku are perhaps some of the strangest ancient sites on Earth, and there are discrepancies between the two hinting at possibly different builders from different time periods. Situated in West Bolivia near Lake Titicaca, at around 13,000 feet above sea level, the Tiwanaku site was first believed to be inhabited around 2,500 to 2,000 years ago, with the first constructions estimated to around 1,500 years ago. Then the culture gradually declined until they disappeared around the year 1300. The Pumapunku complex, which is a site within the Tiwanaku Site region, appears to possibly be older than the surrounding Tiwanaku constructions, as it shows evidence of ancient lost high technology with different tooling work, able to cut blocks with unbelievably straight lines and fine finishing work, and also what appears to be drill holes and extremely accurate cut grooves. The most famous blocks at Pumapunku being its H-shaped blocks. The most notable thing about Pumapunku on first impressions compared to Tiwanaku is its devastation, and there are many blocks sitting at variable angles scattered throughout the ground, many buried, as if the site had been hit by a major cataclysm in the ancient past. And around the central area, all the blocks you see next to one another have been raised and placed over time, so researchers and archaeologists generally have no idea how these blocks were originally positioned or fit together. When you look at this destruction and compare it to the surrounding Tiwanaku buildings, it gives the impression of it being far older, as the main temple and pyramid areas of Tiwanaku have not been affected by the same destructive forces at the Pumapunku site. And when we look at some of the anomalous stonework a little later in the video, I'm sure you'll be pondering the same issues. So let's first take a look at some of the notable Tiwanaku constructions. The Gate of the Sun, or the Calendar Gate as it's sometimes referred to, is one of the most famous monoliths, and various researchers are still indecisive as to whether the carvings on the top portion was part of the original design, or if it was added by a later culture, possibly the Incas. The calendar is also found to only have a 290-day cycle, which is an anomaly on its own. But of course, there are always extraterrestrial theories of these sites due to the mind-boggling constructions, mainly perpetuated by Eric von Daniken and the Ancient Aliens community, where some researchers have even tried explaining the calendar anomaly by suggesting that it may be a calendar from a different planet somewhere. However, there's most likely a far more human explanation that we haven't realised yet. And even though throughout my life I've been open to the idea of aliens possibly visiting Earth, and have seen many UFOs myself, even recently, I think aliens should always be the last option to consider after every other human theory has been exhausted. As with many ancient sites, we're gradually learning their methods for construction, so let's give our ancestors the credit they deserve and not dismiss the constructions as alien in origin without solid evidence. That's just my quick view of the ancient aliens theory. But I haven't dismissed it completely yet, I just haven't seen anything substantial to even hint at it. So back to Tiwanaku. If we look now at the main temple complex, known as the Kalasasaya Temple, the palace is also situated directly behind the temple to the west. The surrounding walls and gates were mostly reconstructed by archaeologists, but the huge megalithic stones were where they've always stood, as are many of the blocks, statues and monoliths around the site. So it's evident that the Tiwanakans did have superb stonemasonry skills. They didn't use mortar in their walls, and they carved monoliths with great precision out of single large blocks of stone. But even some of these walls look relatively mediocre in construction compared to what I show you at Pumapunku shortly. The temple is aligned almost perfectly to cardinal north, only less than a degree off, with the entrance facing east as is usually the case. One of the first people to rediscover the site over a century ago was an early explorer and engineer named Arthur Poznański. He estimated the site to around 15,000 BC, based on the summer and the winter solstice's sun not rising above the cornerstones of the temple, as they would have aligned if it were built 17,000 years ago. That's something you don't see argued often, especially that the temple was aligned very well to north anyway, but it's an interesting observation to take into consideration when looking at ancient sites just in case there is a strong correlation. This is also assuming that the cornerstones of the temple were lined up with the solstices, but they may not have been. The largest complex at Tiwanaku is what's called the Akapana Pyramid, which is a partially excavated step pyramid, where we still don't know exactly what it was used for. But the three main theories are either that it was a temple complex, it was used for astronomical observations, or it was used for water storage, as there was actually a stone drain found at the centre. It may have served all these purposes and more though. Right, now let's take a look at Pumapunku. To start, it doesn't seem to have any obvious alignment, as it's facing around 3 degrees on average off north, so probably wasn't a temple or a religious site. As you can see from all the blocks strewn around the area, many of them buried or half buried at obscure angles, it does seem to point towards this place being destroyed by a cataclysm of some sort. And surely a cataclysm would have affected the Tiwanaku site as well, being only less than a kilometre away. So this is another reason why Pumapunku may be far older than Tiwanaku, and explain why Tiwanaku doesn't have the destruction Pumapunku has. They also place these giant foundation stones on top of the ground to build on, the largest of which is estimated to weigh over 130 tons, which is about 50% heavier than the largest stone used in the Great Pyramid of Giza. But if these were joined at some point, as they seem to have been cracked also, they may have been even more massive. There are these extremely impressive cut grooves on some blocks, with equidistant drill holes, the purpose of which is unknown, but just looking at these it's obvious that it wouldn't have been possible with copper or Bronze Age tools like we think they had at the time. There are other almost perfect drill holes and right angles throughout the blocks, as well as other unusual shapes, as well as the mysterious H blocks. There are around 9 H blocks found so far in total, and even though they may look identical like they were constructed in a mould, none of them actually have the same measurements and were all individually carved. The inset area, as pointed out by researcher Brian Forster, is also what's known as a dovetail shape, where the exterior entrance to the inset is narrower than the deepest point, but all the other corners are about perfect right angles. Many of the blocks in Pumapunku are made from andesite, which is almost as hard as granite, which also seems to contain magnetic anomalies from the quartz within the stone, as many people now take compasses and Gauss meters to run across the faces of these blocks and experience the magnetic anomalies. But saying that, I also couldn't find any videos from a quick search online showing people running compasses across untreated andesite rocks, so I can't say if this is a natural property of andesite or not compared to the Pumapunku blocks. So there's even more details if you dig deeper, but these are the main discrepancies between Tiwanaku and Pumapunku that I've found, as much of the advanced stone and tool work at Pumapunku isn't seen anywhere at the Tiwanaku site, and with the apparent destruction and burial of most of Pumapunku where Tiwanaku didn't appear to see any destruction on the same level, it does strongly indicate the site's being built at a much different time. So what do you think? Do you think Pumapunku was possibly thousands of years older and experienced the same cataclysm that maybe other ancient lost civilizations endured? Do you think the whole Pumapunku Tiwanaku site was actually built around the same time as is generally thought? Or do you have a different theory? Well, please leave a comment with your thoughts, and as always I look forward to more discoveries coming to light. Well, thank you very much for watching. This channel is still new, so please share this video with someone you know who finds these topics interesting, as my goal is to grow the channel in hope of doing this full time in the future, where I'd love to bring more videos and eventually be able to even travel to these sites to examine myself. I'm also on Patreon, Discord and Twitter if you'd like to support or follow me there. Thanks again everybody, and take care of yourselves out there.